Hello and welcome to Adventures with Alchemy, where we do tips, tricks, tastes, and culinary hacks. Today we're going to learn about Chartreuse. I get asked a lot, Christian, what's Chartreuse? Christian, what's Chartreuse? Christian, can you tell me who makes Chartreuse? Christian, where does Chartreuse come from?
Do I look like I know?
So obviously there is a lot of interest in Chartreuse. It is very popular in bars right now. It has been very popular in bars and in food. I have a good friend who makes the most amazing Chartreuse macarons. And if you want to learn how to make them yourself, I suggest you give that video a look. But back to the drinking part.
Finally!
It is a very popular spirit that these days I just can't see a good bar not having. It is used in a lot of different cocktails. It is very pretty, it is very natural. The coloring comes from the botanicals used in the actual spirit, and it has a very cool story and history. So where does it come from? Chartreuse comes from France.
France.
Agua Noire, France. Please forgive me if I'm saying that incorrectly, but Agua Noire in the Chartreuse Mountains. It is made from 130 botanicals, 132 I think if I'm correct.
Oh, you're right.
And it is all natural. It is a monastic liqueur, which means it is made in a monastery by Carthusian monks.
Who are they?
Well, good question. Carthusian monks are monks from the Carthusian order. The Carthusian order was established by the Catholic Church in the 1000s, and they settled in the Chartreuse Mountains. So in 1605, they were given a elixir recipe by a French nobleman named Francois Annibal de Esteres. Please, again, forgive me if I'm butchering that.
No.
This gentleman gave them what he called the elixir of life. They wrote down this recipe, and they studied it, and they learned it, and they came up with the elixir végétal de la grande Chartreuse. Okay? This was the elixir. This was the medicine. This was like the what would eventually become what we drink today. It was very strong.
Just step out of the car and walk a straight line, please.
The original was so intense that it inspired these monks to create something a little bit more pleasant.
Here it goes down into my belly.
And in 1840, the first bottle of Chartreuse was presented and sold. This was green Chartreuse. Green Chartreuse is the daddy. It's the first one.
Oh, Daddy!
Now, the reason why this was done was for many reasons. I don't know all of them, but I'm going to give you a couple. Number one, income. You want to be able to maintain your monastery, okay? You don't need a ton of money, but something to be able to maintain what you're doing and be able to pay for this wonderful elixir.
Money?
Two, health. Drinking alcohol, and I don't mean heavy amounts, just little bits, was safer than drinking water sometimes. I mean, they are in the middle of the Chartreuse Mountains, so I'm sure there was a lot of all-natural springs. I'm sure there still are. And the water was probably very clean. Probably still is. But I can imagine you're going to want something a little bit more than water sometimes.
Plain water, yuck.
And once again, when you're creating elixirs, when you're making a spirit, you got to be tasting it, just like if you're cooking anything else.
Oh, cheers to that.
So, the production and selling of green Chartreuse starts in 1840, okay? Soon after comes yellow Chartreuse. This is a sweeter version. It's a little bit less alcoholic than this one as well, lower in alcohol volume. White Chartreuse was also a thing for a minute there, and that stopped at around the end of the 19th century. In 1903, there was a conflict between France and the Catholic Church. As a result, the Carthusian order was expelled from France. They went to Spain, relaunched production, but were let back into France in 1921. Now, that doesn't mean that they were making Chartreuse again in 1921 in France. They were still making it in Spain, but things started to get cool again between, relationships started to ease up and things got better in the early 1900s.
We good? Yeah, good.
Then, in 1932, they resettled in the Chartreuse Mountains, and in 2018, we see a brand new distillery opened up in Agua Noire, where it originally was from. So they've been back in Agua Noire, France since 2018, making Chartreuse the way it has been since the beginning.
Putting the band back together.
So this recipe was given only to a handful of monks, and to this day, only a handful of monks know the actual recipe.
Very special, super secret.
Now, when I say a handful of monks, I literally mean a handful of monks, like 5, maybe 6. And they travel separately, they all get separate cars. It's very important because if one dies or something happens, you need somebody to be able to carry that information. See, nothing is written down, nothing is recorded.
Do not write this down, okay?
So they talk to each other every once in a while and exchange information and so on. And so those guys, those monks are the only ones that know the recipe, and they're the only ones that know what exactly is going in it.
You can tell me no.
And yeah, they're the ones that taste. They're the ones that are in this beautiful lab, which we're going to get into in a second. And they're the only ones that really know what exactly is the amounts in Chartreuse. We know what the botanicals are. There's 132 botanicals. We know that. We just don't know the amounts and the combinations and things like that. So these 5 monks oversee the production. They have a team of people that go in. Let's say the chefs know the recipe, but the cooks execute what the chefs tell them to do. That could be take batch A, batch B, and batch C and mix them together. And that's essentially what they do. The cooks come in, the distillers and the blenders, they come in and they are just given a giant bag of stuff, and they put that into production and they make it this way. They don't know what the amounts are. You get one monk that comes in there with his perfectly clean, immaculate white robe, and he comes in there and he checks everything and he oversees everything and he records things, and he tells you if you're on or if you're off, and he tells you if things are right or wrong.
Start over!
So the distillery itself, I have never personally been there. Hopefully one day I will get to. But from what I've seen in videos and other amazing YouTube videos from other people, is that you walk up and it's a big, beautiful monastery, and it looks like a monastery, right? Because it is. And you walk in, and let's just say you walk in through like a couple of doors. You open the doors, and it's this big, elaborate, scientific, modern distillery. It's quite amazing. I really hope I get a chance to visit. What is 1 minute a monastery to the Lord, suddenly you go behind a door, and there's this entire distillery production that brings in $18 million in profits a year.
I am definitely in the wrong business.
Yeah, crazy. So to say that Chartreuse is interesting, it's a little bit of an understatement. You literally have to go into the middle of the mountains in France to a distillery that's inside a monastery, and it's the only place in the whole world where they make this, and there's only maybe 5 or 6 people in the whole world that know how it's actually made. So I find that in itself unbelievable.
My mind is blown.
And yeah, I think that just that in itself should give you enough interest to want to try this if you haven't already. So, what is Chartreuse? What is it? We know where it came from. We know sort of how it's made. We know the history of who makes it. But really, what is it? What does it taste like? Well, Chartreuse, as we talked about earlier, is 132 different botanicals. All kinds of herbs, spices, roots are gathered all from the region and are steeped, fermented, and distilled. The color comes from the actual plants itself. This is all natural. The colors are all natural. They are sweetened just a little bit, but everything is natural. Everything that comes in here is natural. For example, honey is what sweetens this. So it could be everything that you're tasting is natural.
It's organic, locally grown, and available now.
So yes, naturally sweetened. What do they taste like? Sweet and herbaceous. Just a mouthful of herbs is the best way to put it. You really need to try it to really understand what Chartreuse tastes like. So when someone says, hey, what does Chartreuse taste like? I say, tastes like Chartreuse.
Understand? No.
So next time you go to a bar and you want to try something new, or next time you're at the store and you want to try something new, pick up a bottle of yellow or green Chartreuse. I recommend green. And maybe look up a recipe or two. One of the most famous is called The Last Word. And we are going to get into that right now. So let's make a cocktail.